In the summer of 2024, Alex and Danielle Carter closed on what they thought was their dream home, an elegant, Mediterranean-style estate in the hills of Sherman Oaks. The house had belonged to Paul Sorvino, the legendary actor known for his roles in Goodfellas and Law and Order. He had passed away in 2022, and his widow, Dee Dee Sorvino, had sold the property quietly, reluctant to part with the memories but unable to maintain it alone. For the Carters, a young couple from Chicago, the house was a steal. A bit outdated, sure, lots of dark wood, heavy curtains, and that old Hollywood charm that made the place feel like a time capsule, but they could see the potential. Alex, a financial analyst, and Danielle, a freelance writer, had been looking for a house with character, and this one certainly had it. Paul Sorvino lived here, Alex had said when they first toured the house. That's insane. Danielle wasn't as enthusiastic. The house felt heavy, like it had been weighed down by decades of voices, smoke, and memories. The dining room had an old wooden table that looked like it had hosted countless family gatherings, deals, arguments. The study still had a built-in cigar humidor, and the home theater was adorned with framed movie posters, some with Sorvino's signature. But the price was right, and within a month they had moved in. It didn't take long for the strangeness to begin. The first odd occurrence was subtle. A faint smell of cigar smoke in the evenings, despite neither of them smoking. The scent would drift through the house, strongest in the study and the master bedroom. At first, they blamed it on the old carpet, the furniture that had absorbed years of smoke. Then came the voices. Danielle, often home alone during the day, would hear low murmurs from the study. At first, she thought Alex had left the TV on, but when she checked, the room was silent except for the faint scent of tobacco lingering in the air. One night, as Alex worked late, Danielle sat on the living room couch, editing an article. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement in the hallway, a shadow passing by, just for a split second. She dismissed it as paranoia, but when Alex got home, he mentioned something strange. "I swear I heard someone say my name when I was in the driveway," he said, locking the door behind him. A man's voice. It was weird as hell. They laughed it off. The house was old. Old houses had quirks, but neither of them could shake the feeling that something else was going on. Then the furniture started shifting. Not in an obvious Hollywood horror way, no chairs flying across the room, but small things. The office chair in the study would roll back from the desk as if someone had just stood up. The framed movie posters in the theater room would be slightly crooked in the morning, even if they had straightened them the night before. And then there was the piano. The house had come with a grand piano in the corner of the living room, covered in dust, untouched. But some nights, around 3 a.m., they would wake to the sound of a single note being played. Just one. A deep, resonant key, struck hard enough to ring through the house. Alex finally confronted the possibility neither of them wanted to admit. "You think it's him?" he asked one night as they sat on the porch drinking wine. "Paul Sorvino?" Danielle scoffed, but her voice was thin. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Alex exhaled, rubbing his temples. The smoke, the voices, the piano. Maybe he never left. They didn't laugh this time. The air inside the house felt different as the weeks passed, though neither Alex nor Danielle could put it into words. It wasn't just the scent of cigar smoke that came and went like a ghostly tide, or the shifting furniture, or even the strange sounds that filled the hallways in the dead of night. It was something deeper, something woven into the bones of the house itself, a presence that seemed to watch them, that seemed to remember. Danielle tried to ignore it. She buried herself in her work, typing furiously at the antique oak desk in the study, trying to convince herself that the occasional scrape of a chair behind her was nothing more than settling wood, that the whisper of movement in the doorway was only a trick of the light. But there was one thing she couldn't ignore: the mirror. It was an old, imposing piece, framed in carved mahogany, hanging above the fireplace in the living room. She hadn't paid it much attention at first, but now, whenever she passed by it, something made her glance just for a second, just long enough to catch the way her reflection seemed slightly off, slightly delayed, as if the mirror were not just reflecting her but considering her. One evening, after Alex had gone to bed, she stood in front of it, studying her own face. The dim glow of the hallway light cast strange shadows over her features, making her look unfamiliar, hollow-eyed. She lifted a hand, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The reflection followed, but for just a fraction of a second too late. Her breath caught. She turned sharply, expecting what? Someone standing behind her? The vague shape of a man watching from the dark? But the room was empty. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She didn't look at the mirror again that night. Alex, on the other hand, had his own encounters. He never spoke of them outright, never voiced his growing discomfort, but his habits changed. He took to checking the locks on the doors twice, sometimes 3 times before bed. He started leaving the bathroom light on overnight, something he had never done before. And more than once, Danielle woke in the middle of the night to find him sitting up in bed, staring at the bedroom door, his brow furrowed in the dim glow of the streetlights filtering through the curtains. The breaking point came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Danielle had gone out for groceries, leaving Alex alone in the house. He sat in the living room, his laptop open on the coffee table, half watching an old black-and-white movie playing on mute. The house was silent, still. And then, from the study, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. He froze, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. It came again. A slow, deliberate movement, the sound unmistakable. Alex's mouth went dry. He forced himself to stand, to move toward the hallway, his bare feet making no sound against the hardwood. The door to the study was open, just as they had left it, the dim afternoon light casting long shadows over the desk, the bookshelves, the framed posters that lined the walls. Nothing seemed out of place. But as he stepped inside, a sharp, acrid scent filled his nose. Cigar smoke, stronger than ever before. His chest tightened. The windows were closed, the air still and heavy. But the scent was undeniable, thick and lingering, as if someone had been standing there only moments ago, exhaling a slow plume of smoke into the dimly lit room. And then he saw it. The chair. The leather office chair, the one that always seemed to shift slightly in the night, was pulled back from the desk just slightly, just enough to suggest that someone had been sitting there. Alex swallowed hard, a cold weight settling in his stomach. The house was watching, waiting. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The smell lingered for hours after Alex left the study. He told himself it was in his head, that once a scent burrowed into your senses, it could haunt you even when it was gone. But when Danielle returned from the store, she wrinkled her nose the second she stepped inside. "Did you light a candle or something?" she asked, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. Alex hesitated. "No." "Then why does it smell like?" She trailed off, but they both knew the answer. The smell of smoke clung to the air, thick and unmistakable. It was stronger near the study, almost suffocating, as if an entire box of cigars had been left burning. Danielle stared down the hallway, rubbing her arms as if a chill had passed through her. "I don't like this," she said. "It's getting worse." Alex didn't answer. He just nodded. That night, neither of them spoke about it, but the house felt different. The air seemed heavier, as if the very walls were pressing in around them. The usual noises, the creaks of the old wood, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sounds of the neighborhood settling down for the night felt sharper, more deliberate. And then the music started. It was just past 3 in the morning when the first note rang out from the piano downstairs. A single, low key, struck hard enough to vibrate through the floor. Danielle sat up immediately, heart hammering. "Did you hear that?" Alex was already swinging his legs out of bed. He grabbed his phone, turned on the flashlight, and took a deep breath. "Stay here." "No way." She was right behind him as he pushed open the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, stretching into darkness. But the moment they stepped into the living room, the smell hit them. Not just cigars. Something else. Cologne. Old-fashioned. Musky. Like something a man would have worn 50 years ago. It was so strong it made Danielle's stomach turn. The piano sat in the corner of the room, its lid closed, bathed in the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains. Nothing moved. Alex approached cautiously, stepping around the couch, his flashlight beam sweeping over the keys. And then the air changed. A shift subtle but undeniable, like the way a room changes when someone else enters it. The kind of feeling that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The air went cold, unnaturally so, and Danielle let out a sharp breath, clutching her arms. Alex turned his head just slightly, just enough to see the reflection in the mirror above the fireplace. And he stopped breathing. A man stood behind him. Not a shadow. Not a trick of the light. A man. Broad shoulders, dark suit. His face was obscured in the dimness, but Alex could make out the shape of him, the way he stood there silent, still watching. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. His entire body locked up, ice spreading through his limbs. Then, from behind him, the unmistakable sound of someone exhaling a long, slow breath. Danielle must have seen it too, because she gasped, clutching Alex's arm. "Oh my God!" she whispered. "Alex!" And then the mirror shattered. The cracks spread like lightning, splintering across the glass in an instant. Danielle screamed, stumbling backward, and Alex spun around, his breath catching in his throat. Nothing. The room was empty. The air was still. But the mirror wasn't just cracked. The fracture ran from the top corner all the way down to the center, splitting the reflection in two. But in the broken glass, just for a second, Alex swore he still saw him. Paul Sorvino, or what was left of him. The silence after the mirror shattered was worse than the sound itself. It wasn't just an absence of noise, it was expectant, as if the house itself was waiting for them to react. Alex's breath was ragged, his chest rising and falling too quickly. He turned, eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign of movement, any trace of the figure he had seen. But the living room was still. The piano sat untouched. The heavy curtains didn't even stir. Danielle had pressed herself against the far wall, her hands trembling as she clutched at the fabric of her pajama top. Her wide eyes flicked from the broken mirror to Alex. "You saw him," she whispered. It wasn't a question. Alex swallowed, his throat dry. "Yeah." Danielle squeezed her eyes shut for a second, then exhaled sharply through her nose, as if steeling herself. She pushed off the wall and marched toward the mirror. "Wait!" She ignored him, stepping right up to the fractured glass. The pieces hadn't fallen, held together by the frame, but the deep, jagged crack had twisted their reflections into something distorted and wrong. She lifted a shaking hand, hesitated, then reached out, her fingertips grazing the cold surface. The moment she touched it, the air shifted again. A deep creak groaned through the house, like old wood straining under pressure. The temperature plummeted, a sharp wave of icy air rushing past them. The scent of cologne stronger now, suffocating, mixed with something else. Tobacco and meat. A heavy, greasy scent, like steak sizzling in a pan, like an expensive meal prepared with care. Danielle jerked her hand back as if burned. "What the hell is happening?" Alex turned away from the mirror, scanning the room, his pulse thundering. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I don't think he wants us here." Danielle opened her mouth to argue, to agree. He wasn't sure, but then, from upstairs, came a sound that froze them both in place. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. A heavy tread moving down the hallway above them, the boards creaking beneath unseen weight. Alex grabbed Danielle's wrist and pulled her toward him. They backed away from the mirror, moving toward the front door without speaking, without taking their eyes off the darkened staircase leading up to the second floor. The footsteps paused. Then, after a beat, they continued, coming down the stairs. One step, then another, not rushing, not hesitant, deliberate. Danielle's breath hitched. "Alex!" Before she could finish, the final step groaned under unseen weight. And then the voice came, deep, familiar, heavy with age but strong enough to fill the room. "You're in my house." Alex felt his stomach drop. The voice wasn't in his head. It wasn't imagined. It was real. It was here. And it was angry. The voice had weight. It wasn't just sound, it was presence. It curled through the air like smoke, thick and undeniable, pressing against their skin, sinking into their bones. Danielle's fingers dug into Alex's arm, her nails sharp, her grip trembling. Neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. The house was alive with silence, the kind that watched. Then came the breath. A long, slow exhale from somewhere just beyond the staircase. Not a draft. Not the shifting of old wood. This was human, measured. The kind of breath a man takes when he's thinking, when he's standing in the dark, watching you, deciding what happens next. Danielle whispered, barely moving her lips. Alex. He knew what she was going to say. We have to leave. But they didn't. Not yet. Because the air changed again. The house exhaled. Not just a breeze, not just a shift. The walls themselves seemed to loosen, like the whole structure had been holding its breath and was finally releasing it. The temperature swung violently. The air, thick with that unmistakable scent cologne, smoke, charred meat grew hot, pressing against their skin in a way that felt personal, deliberate. Then the sound came. Not footsteps, not a voice, something worse. The piano. A deep, familiar note, struck hard low and resonant. Not random, not accidental. Played. The note rang out, filling every inch of space, vibrating through the floor. Then another. Then another. Slow, purposeful, like a man playing a song he had played 1,000 times before. Alex turned his head, eyes locking onto the piano in the corner of the room. His pulse pounded in his ears. The lid was still closed. No hands moved across the keys. But the music continued, filling the room, filling them. Danielle was shaking. Her lips parted, her breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. Alex stepped forward, just slightly, his muscles locked, his throat tight. The song changed. It wasn't just notes now. It was melody. And worse, it was recognizable. A slow, careful rendition of O Sol Mio. The realization hit like ice water down his spine. Paul Sorvino had sung this song. Not once. Not twice. Countless times in interviews, on stages, at private dinners. It had been his favorite. The music stopped abruptly. Silence swallowed the house. And then, just behind Alex, so close he felt the shift in the air, came a single word. Listen. A whisper. Command. The moment it was spoken, the walls shuddered. Not an earthquake. Not movement. Something deeper, something that vibrated through the wood, through the furniture, through the very foundation of the house. And then the house spoke. Not in words. Not in sentences. It remembered. A burst of sound exploded around them, laughter, voices layered over each other, the clinking of glasses, the deep rumble of a man speaking Italian, the distant echo of a woman's voice, affectionate, teasing. Music swelled, filling the air with warmth, with life. For a moment it wasn't a haunted house. It was a home, a living, breathing memory. Danielle let out a choked sound, half gasp, half sob. Alex grabbed her hand, fingers squeezing tight, anchoring them both. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The air flattened. The warmth vanished. The voices were gone. And in their place, silence. Not empty silence. Not peaceful. Waiting. Watching. And then, from upstairs, a door clicked open. The door upstairs creaked open with a slow, deliberate groan. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The air was thick with something they couldn't name, not just presence, but intention. Alex turned toward the stairs. He didn't want to. His body screamed to run, to drag Danielle out the front door and never look back. But something pulled at him. Not physically. Not with hands. With memory. The house wanted them to see. Danielle gripped his arm as they stepped forward together. Each step up the staircase felt heavier, like wading through deep water. The hall was dark, the door at the end barely visible in the faint glow from a street lamp outside. It was Paul Sorvino's old bedroom. The hinges let out a hushed whine as Alex pushed the door open. Inside, the air was warmer, more alive. The scent of cigar smoke was thick, but underneath it was something else: leather, old books, a faint trace of aftershave. The room wasn't abandoned, felt lived in. And then they saw it. On the nightstand, next to the neatly made bed, an old cigar rested in a glass ashtray, smoldering. Smoke curled lazily into the air as if it had just been put down. A final sign, a final reminder. This was still his house. Alex and Danielle backed away, hearts hammering, a silent understanding passing between them. They didn't belong here, and the house knew it. By morning, they had packed their bags. By nightfall, they were gone. And in the empty house, behind the closed doors, the air remained thick with cigar smoke. Waiting. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.